Sweet vale of Avoca, how calm could I rest in thy bosom of shade with the friends I love best, where the storms that we feel in this cold world should cease, and our hearts, like thy waters, be mingled in peace.
Glorious mountains roll along the scenic Piedmont region, silent witnesses to many years of natural and human history. This picturesque landscape is inspiring, and so is its culture and heritage. 12 millennia of history, from the times of ancient Native Americans to the 21st century and everything in between, took place here. Avoca is home to many distinct layers of American history. It is the site originally settled by American Indians, known as the Suponi, who tragically all but disappeared from this land by the eve of the American Revolution. They lived and thrived upon these very grounds long before the arrival of English speakers. Later, this land became the property of Colonel Charles Lynch, a soldier in the Revolutionary War, as well as a lawmaker and planter. The plantation was passed down through the Lynch family and remained in the family until 1980. Who were the people of Avoca, and what were their stories? The Suponi were a Native American tribe that lived here, were Siouan-speaking and economically prosperous people who were related in terms of language and culture to the Monacan Confederacy. In fact, the Suponi lived in modern-day Alta Vista, Virginia, and in large numbers at the confluence of the Otter and Staten Rivers. The Suponi were known as a hunting-gathering community that ultimately moved away from their ancestral homeland by the mid-18th century due to the devastating effects of European diseases and attacks from hostile Native American war parties. As time marched on, the legacy of Avoca moved into a new era. A new nation was dawning. Charles Lynch Jr., alternately known as Colonel Charles Lynch, was the eldest son of an Irish immigrant, Charles Lynch Sr. According to family legend, Charles Lynch Sr. ran away from his home in Galway, Ireland as a teenage boy. Once in Virginia, Charles Lynch Sr. worked as an indentured servant for a kindly gentleman named Christopher Clark, a prominent member of the Society of Friends, whom the English derisively called Quakers. Charles Lynch Sr. referred to his adoption by Clark as a second birth in a new land. With new acquaintances like Clark and the Society of Friends, Lynch prospered, even marrying into the Clark family. After numerous land acquisitions and relocations, Charles Lynch Sr. and his wife, Sarah Clark Lynch, and 6 children settled at a plantation called Chestnut Hill, which is now the site of downtown Lynchburg, Virginia. When Charles Lynch Sr. died prematurely around 1750, he divided his land between his 4 sons, Charles Jr., Edward, John, and Christopher. While 3 sons gravitated to Lynch family land holdings on the James River, Charles Lynch Jr. acquired vast tracts of land along the banks of the Staten River. Avoca Museum now sits on the seat of Charles Lynch Jr.'s plantation, which he called Green Level. Charles Lynch Jr. was a prominent planter and shaper in colonial politics. In 1769, Charles Lynch Jr. was elected to the Virginia House of Burgesses as a representative of Bedford County. He was placed on the Committee of Safety and thus poised to help enforce boycotts of British tea, among other commodities. He, along with the eventual first governor of Virginia, Patrick Henry, formed an association to prohibit the exchange or sale of tea, glass, and paper products until the British taxes on those items were removed. In addition, Lynch served on the Committee of Public Claims, and as a representative from Bedford County to the Virginia Convention in March of 1775. Because of these positions, he was able to voice his displeasure about how the British closed Boston's port after the Boston Tea Party, as well as hear Patrick Henry's famous "Give me liberty or give me death" speech, and vote in favor of Henry's proposal to ready Virginia militia forces for war with the British. Additionally, Lynch raised, trained, and led soldiers into battle during the late phase of the war. At the Battle of Guilford Courthouse in March of 1781, Lynch's riflemen served capably alongside militiamen commanded by William Campbell, the hero of the Battle of Kings Mountain. At the end of the war, a grateful Virginia legislature rewarded Campbell's service by carving territory off of Bedford County and renaming it Campbell County. This museum is located in the southern reaches of that county. Lynch, by this point a colonel of militia, was also present for the surrender of Lord Cornwallis's army at Yorktown in October of 1781. But the most well-known of Colonel Lynch's contributions to the Patriot War effort took place in the summer of 1780. In that year, an American spy named John Wyatt uncovered intelligence that indicated Virginians loyal to the British cause, known to their enemies as the Tories, were organizing a plot to sabotage Virginia's independence effort. Wyatt learned that the Tories intended to subvert the saltpeter and lead mining operations superintended by Lynch. He also discovered that the Tories planned to march on the arsenal at New London and capture Patriot muskets. Following that, the Tories had designs to march on Charlottesville, free British prisoners of war, and attempt to capture the new capital at Richmond. When Governor Thomas Jefferson heard of this plot, he ordered Colonel Lynch and several of his associates in southern and southwestern Virginia to snuff out the plot and arrest the participants. Acting quickly, Lynch and his associates arrested 75 conspirators. Lynch decided to try these individuals right here on these grounds, and according to legend, beneath a black walnut tree, 16 men were found guilty and, according to tradition, were sentenced to be flogged with 39 lashes well laid on. The convicted could obtain mercy by crying, "Liberty forever!" These trials, referred to by Colonel Lynch himself as Lynch's Law, were effective enough to ensue no further significant Tory uprisings in southern Virginia for the balance of the war. As the 18th century gave way to the 19th century, the term Lynch's Law was shortened to lynching, but it should be remembered that Lynch's Law originally had nothing to do with murderous violence against African Americans. In fact, Colonel Lynch renounced slavery after the Revolution and manumitted or freed by decree his slaves. He cited his rationale for doing so in a 1792 document.
We, from a conviction that all men are by nature free and agreeable to our Savior Christ, believe that it is our duty to do unto all men as we would that they should do unto us. We free these people.
After his death in 1796, Colonel Lynch's son, Anselm, reversed his father's decision and reacquired enslaved people, putting them to work in the tobacco fields and outbuildings of this plantation. Thus the legacy of slavery was reinstituted here and would remain for the next 69 years. Anselm Lynch's eldest son, Charles Henry Lynch, inherited the bulk of the plantation in 1826 and held it until his death in 1874. His nephew, James Deering, was the heir apparent to the old Green Level property, which, by the eve of the American Civil War, had its name changed to Avoca. Having dreamed from a young age of being a soldier, Deering was accepted into the United States Military Academy at West Point, in part due to his prestigious uncle's political connections. However, he felt impelled to resign 2 weeks before the end of his third year when Virginia seceded from the Union and joined the fledgling Confederate States. Deering served superbly in Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia in both the artillery and cavalry wings of service. In 1864, Deering married a Petersburg area socialite named Roxana Burgett, and the couple produced a daughter named Mary Lucretia Deering. After the Confederate loss of Richmond in the final days of the war, General Lee withdrew his army from Richmond and Petersburg with the intent to escape General Ulysses S. Grant's forces and into North Carolina. During the retreat, Lee desired to secure a crossing of the Appomattox River at High Bridge, 4 miles east of Farmville. The task of capturing the bridgehead fell to young and, by this point, General Deering. Deering's brigade attacked a force of Union cavalry and infantry there on April 6, 1865. During the battle, a bullet pierced Deering's lungs and mortally wounded him. He lingered at the Ladies' Relief Hospital in Lynchburg until April 22, 1865. He was the Confederacy's last general officer to die in the conflict. The High Bridge engagement was the last victory for the Army of Northern Virginia, as 3 days later, Lee surrendered the remnant of his army to Union General Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse, ending the war in Virginia. Owing to the fact that James Deering was killed at the end of the Civil War, the Avoca plantation he was due to inherit was instead acquired by his sister, Mary Anna Deering, who in 1868 had married Thomas Fauntleroy of Middlesex County, Virginia. Shortly after the Fauntleroys took possession of Avoca, the ancient house standing on the site was destroyed by a fire in 1879. A second house was completed in 1883, but it too was destroyed by another fire in September of 1900. The current Avoca house that stands today is a Queen Anne Victorian mansion constructed in 1901 and was designed by Lynchburg architect John Minor Botts Lewis. Thomas and Mary Anna Deering Fauntleroy were parents of 8 children, 6 of whom lived to adulthood. The children were well educated and influential figures. They matured to be a soldier, professionals, philanthropists, educators, and a missionary. Welcome to Avoca Museum. We hope that you enjoy your tour and expect that you will use the 12,000 years of human history that played out on this site as a lens through which American history in general can be viewed.
There is not in the wide world a valley so sweet as that vale in whose bosom the bright waters meet. Oh, the last rays of feeling and life must depart ere the bloom of that valley shall fade from my heart. Yet it was not that nature had shed o'er the scene her purest of crystal and brightest of green. 'Twas not her soft magic of streamlet or hill. Oh no, it was something more exquisite still. 'Twas that friends, the beloved of my bosom, were near, who made every dear scene of enchantment more dear, and who felt how the best charms of nature improve when we see them reflected from looks that we love. Sweet vale of Avoca, how calm could I rest in thy bosom of shade with the friends I love best, where the storms that we feel in this cold world should cease, and our hearts, like thy waters, be mingled in peace.